All right, President Trump back at the New York Economic Club. So let's bring in Kevin Hassett, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Steve Moore, Unleash Prosperity Hotline, and host of More Money on WABC Radio. Kevin Hassett, are we going to get a growthier speech? We need a growthier climb the ladder of success. I can afford homes. Prices can come down. Right. I know you're the mastermind of all this stuff. What can we expect?
No. You know, I think that one of the things that is difficult about this time is there's so much negativity in the press and in the media. And President Trump's goal tomorrow is to have a super positive agenda that motivates people to be optimistic about the future of our country again. And so I'm very, very excited about the speech tomorrow, where he's going to lay out a very Larry Kudlow-esque growthy agenda with tax cuts and reduced government spending and deregulation and trade policy as well. And so we're going to hear from him the specific details of what he wants to do if he's elected again. And we contrast that with Vice President Harris, who we don't know what she's supporting and what she's not. You know, they're leaking policies from her campaign, but she's not actually embracing them herself or putting them on her website. And so President Trump is going to have a sharp contrast both with his optimism and with his specifics tomorrow.
Yeah, you know, Steve Moore, Kamala keeps trying to copycat, but you can't copycat. You got to go for the real thing.
You can do worse than that.
You got to know. I mean, you got to go for the real thing, the authentic, real thing, because not going to flip-flop. But I think Kevin is right. I mean, I think it's going to be a very growthy speech. Steve Moore, if there's one thing you'd like to see and hear in the speech, what would that be?
Well, I want to aspire to get back to, you know, Reagan and JFK rates of economic growth of 3.5% to 4%. You know, and if you do that, so many of the problems go away. They really do. You want to bring down the debt, you grow that economy 3.5% to 4%. You want real wages to grow, you get that high growth rate. So that really is the center. And incidentally, it's a great way to contrast himself with Kamala Harris, because I've listened to what she's been saying now for the last, 4 weeks or so, and she doesn't say a whole lot. But I don't think, Larry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think she's ever even used the word growth.
Never.
I think that's alien to her.
You're right.
It's all about redistribution. It's all about punishing greed. It's all about, profits are too high, prices are too high, which are too high. So I think, and I'd like him to just go down the list of things that he accomplished. You know, your buddy and mine, Arthur Laffer, and I have a book that's coming out in 2 weeks called The Trump Economic Miracle. And what you and Kevin and Donald Trump and so many others did was a miracle. We had one of the, as Trump would say, one of the best economic recoveries ever. And I want him to remind people of that.
But I think it's so important. You're absolutely right. If you get yourself 3+ growth, instead of this 1.8, 1.7, 1.8.
Yeah, right.
You get yourself back to 3+, which we did for over 70 years after World War II, okay? You know, I mean, growth creates tremendous opportunities. Growth, for example, dissolves deficits. Growth dissolves debt. You know, the debt to GDP ratio comes down. If you're growing the economy, you don't need to borrow. You don't need the welfare payments. People don't want them because they have good-paying jobs, for example. The GDP gets larger, and the debt gets smaller. I mean, that's the way to deal with that. One other point, Kevin Hassett, should Mr. Trump stay with a trade policy of reciprocity, or do you think he's going to stay with this baseline tariff? Now, Kamala Harris is coming after him on some static estimates of what a baseline tariff might cost American consumers. I'm a big reciprocity fan. You know, if Japan cuts tariffs, we'll cut tariffs. Or if China raises tariffs, then we're going to have to raise tariffs to defend ourselves. Which is a better policy, baseline tariff or reciprocity, Kevin?
Well, the president has advocated both, and he really believes in reciprocity. That was something that you and I talked about. And you had asked, Steve, what's the one thing you're hoping about tomorrow? The one thing I want to say is remind people that what the president did when we were talking about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I showed him some estimates of what it would do to GDP, and he says, people don't care about GDP, Kevin. What's it going to do for the American worker? And so the president is going to be focused like a laser beam tomorrow on the American worker, and that's going to involve his trade policy, which at least will be reciprocal. reciprocity, and it'll also be, getting blue-collar people to have wage increases again by creating a business-friendly environment. And so I think that exactly where he ends up with the tariff versus reciprocity is something that's still, it's something that they're still developing. His team is still developing.
Steve Moore, speaking of friendly countries, Japan is a great ally. Why shouldn't Nippon Steel be able to buy U.S. steel? Yeah, U.S. steel's been on a decline ever since Andrew Carnegie left. So isn't it time to save it with Nippon Steel?
Yeah, it is. I think, unfortunately, this is the one thing that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump agree on, and unfortunately, they're both wrong on this. This is a deal that will actually save a lot of steel jobs. Japan is an ally, and if we don't do this, it's very clear what is going to happen. We'll be playing right into the hands of the Chinese, who now dominate about 50% of the world's steel market. So I think this is good for American workers. Foreign investment in the United States is a good thing. I mean, it's when you and Kevin and Donald Trump did the big tax cut, what happened? All this money flowed into the United States. So I think they're both wrong on this. It's a good one. And I do like, you asked me earlier today, Larry, what do I think about Elon Musk's idea of a kind of grace commission against government waste? I love that idea. I think it's spectacular. You remember in the Reagan years, they came up with $400 billion of waste in the budget, and that was when the budget was 1/5 as big as it is today. So I really like that idea. I think, and you mentioned drain the swamp. That's a great way to drain the swamp.
Yeah, Kevin Hassett, it's interesting. Steve is referring to Peter Grace, who was a famous businessman, and they had the Grace Commission under Reagan. But he had, Peter Grace brought in hundreds of business people, and they went all through the federal bureaucracy and the federal programs and came up with hundreds of billions of dollars of savings, which would be equivalent to trillions of dollars. Now, Elon Musk, I don't know if Elon Musk wants to chair this commission or just be a part of it, but I think it's a very interesting idea. I hope it's something Mr. Trump puts in his speech tomorrow. What you think about that?
Yeah, it will be in the speech tomorrow, almost surely. The fact is that Elon Musk is one of the most remarkable human beings in human history. If you think about all the things that he's done with Starlink and Tesla and SpaceX, that he takes problems and he solves them. And you wonder, why are Elon Musk and Donald Trump growing so close? Well, if you look at how Donald Trump got his start, right, it started with fixing an ice skating rink in Central Park. His career has been finding problems and solving them. That's why voters rallied around him in 2016, and I think the partnership with Elon Musk is going to be very motivating for people who want to get this country back on the right track again. Just
think, you could have an administration with business people involved with it. Oh, my goodness. I got to jump, fellas. Thank you very much, Kevin Hassett, Steve Moore. We appreciate it. All right.